There's been a lot of discussion about partisanship and how the Democratic Party is not soft on crime. And there are some Democrats who are not soft on crime. But in terms of defunding the police, a clarion call for the Democratic Party, does that make us more or less safe?
I would say that makes us less safe.
What about working feverishly against long-term incarceration? Is that more or less safe?
Less safe.
Mr. Woody, what about cashless bail? Again, that's a uniquely partisan initiative, funded by Democrats nationally, locally, and state level. Does that make us more or less safe?
Cashless bail makes us less safe.
Mr. Campbell, in regards to the complete disregard of our borders, our immigration laws, does that make us more or less safe?
Less safe.
What about decriminalizing all drugs? That's a partisan initiative in some parts of the country. More or less safe?
Less safe.
What about funding NGOs? Tens of billions. We talk about funding. We talk about mental health. We talk about victims funding. Tens of billions of dollars over the last 4 years that was handed directly to people who were here illegally. Does that make us more or less safe? So it seems to me that we have an ideology problem, not a funding problem. And would you say it's a coincidence that the top 10 most dangerous cities in the country are led locally by Democrats?
Thank you. I recognize Mr. Knott from the state of North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the witnesses here, thank you for your time. Thank you for your testimony. Ms. King, it's always good to see you again. Mr. Asher, I want to start with you. You talked about the decline in the homicide rates over the last time period. What time period specifically are you referring to?
In general, murder rose 30% nationally in 2020, had stayed generally at that level between 2020 and 2022, fell about 10% in 2023. Last year, the FBI had it at 14, 15%, and then so far, the best estimate is roughly a 20% decline this year.
And what, in terms of the homicides that you're referring to, what are the overall numbers per year on average?
2014 is previously the lowest murder rate ever recorded in the U.S., was about 14,500. In 2020, it hit about 22,000.
And are you referring to convictions, charges?
No, this is just from police reporting. This has nothing to do with the prosecution angle.
The only reason why I'm asking is you're aware that it is a homicide to sell a lethal dose of drugs, correct?
So in this case, it's the difference between a homicide and a murder. From the prosecution side, that can be a homicide, but from the way that the FBI is counting it, it would be a non-murder homicide.
A non-murder homicide. Okay. Well,
yes.
A homicide a criminal activity results in the death of the victim, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it true that since 2000 there have been roughly 1.5 million victims who have lost their lives because of overdoses?
I don't have that number, but I can.
Okay. So I
don't doubt that.
That's not as rosy as, crime is going away, crime is decreasing, correct? That's 1.5 million Americans over the last 20 years who are not captured in this batch of stats. It's astounding. It's astounding. You're also aware that there was a leader in the Capitol Police Department, Mr. Michael Pulliam, who was suspended for manipulating crime data to make it appear that his community was safer than it actually was. Are you aware of that?
Are you talking about Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
I'm familiar with the allegation. I believe that it's under investigation.
Yes. So it is potentially feasible that the conclusions that you're deriving, taken from police departments, are not the full picture.
I believe that it is the full picture.
I know you do, but it's possible. I'm just asking if it's possible.
So crime data is very flawed.
You just disregarded 1.5 million dead Americans.
Well, I'm not disregarding anybody,
to try to paint a picture that we are in a safer community now.
Even overdoses are falling this year. I think that I can appreciate it.
That's because they've been so elevated.
Well,
and they're falling because we have protected the American citizens by securing the border.
One can appreciate a trend that we are seeing currently, a downward trend in both overdoses. We're seeing a downward trend in murder. We're seeing a downward trend in violent crime, while also not saying that these trends are acceptable, that the problem is solved.
When you sit here and look at and talk to the people on the ground in Charlotte, sir, I would submit that your conclusions are not tethered to reality. Now, Officer Campbell, I want to talk to you just briefly about various initiatives. There's been a lot of discussion about partisanship and how the Democratic Party is not soft on crime. And there are some Democrats who are not soft on crime. But in terms of defunding the police, a clarion call for the Democratic Party, does that make us more or less safe?
I would say that makes us less safe.
What about working feverishly against long-term incarceration? Is that more or less safe?
Less safe.
Mr. Woody, what about cashless bail? Again, that's a uniquely partisan initiative, funded by Democrats nationally, locally, and the state level. Does that make us more or less safe?
Cashless bail makes us less safe.
Mr. Campbell, in regards to the complete disregard of our borders, our immigration laws, does that make us more or less safe?
Less safe.
What about decriminalizing all drugs? That's a partisan initiative in some parts of the country. More or less safe?
Less safe.
What about funding NGOs, tens of billions? We talk about funding, we talk about mental health, we talk about victims funding, tens of billions of dollars over the last 4 years that was handed directly to people who were here illegally. Does that make us more or less safe?
Be less safe.
So it seems to me that we have an ideology problem, not a funding problem. And would you say it's a coincidence that the top 10 most dangerous cities in the country are led locally by Democrats? Is that a coincidence?
No.
Now, Mr. Federico, I want to ask you, there's been a lot of discussion about you cannot incarcerate your way to public safety. Do you agree with that?
Well, how can we find out? We don't do it.
Right.
I mean, there's percentages out there that after 3 years, after 3 years of release, 68% of them are rearrested.
Right.
So we've got to figure it out first. Put them there first, then let's do the math.
Right. If someone has 39 arrests, 25 felonies, you think they've earned the right to be in a jail cell?
He has probably one of the best resumes of a criminal.
You think he deserves mental health, or does he deserve to be in jail?
I think he deserves to be dead.
Yeah. Ms. Alderman, in regards to your tragedy, again, thank you for being here. Did the criminal who affected you so mildly, does he deserve mental health, or does he deserve to be in jail?
The criminal,
Time has expired, but I'll let you finish that question.
the criminals who killed Mary are not mentally ill, so it's not a valid concern of mine.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request, just one this time. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from Reuters dated September 29, 2025, entitled Exclusive Federal Drug Prosecutions Fall to Lowest Level in Decades as Trump Shifts Focus to Deportations.
Without objection. We recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of my colleagues for coming to be a part of this. I want to thank you for holding this hearing here in the city of Charlotte. I moved to Charlotte 20 years ago, brought my family here to become the pastor of First Baptist Church here in downtown Charlotte. And I can tell you that in that 20 years, the Charlotte that we have discussed here today, there's a lot of issues that I think all of us have recognized. And quite frankly, I'm very thankful to have an opportunity for us to converse on how we can make it safer and for its residents and its visitors. All of us here in this room and across the country have seen the video of the tragic murder of Iryna Zarutska. We've heard the harrowing stories that all of you have shared today. And again, I add my heartfelt condolences to you, but my incredible admiration for your strength and resolve and courage to continue to tell the stories, and you cannot quit telling them, and I'm very grateful for your willingness to step up. But in the case of Iryna Zarutska, DeCarlos Brown Jr., we know, had a long criminal history, and despite this, in his last encounter with the law prior to murdering Iryna, Magistrate Teresa Stokes released him back into the community with only a simple, and I quote, written promise to appear for his trial. Now, sadly, it's all too common for a criminal to be let off easy by a judge, only to have him turn around and commit even worse crime. And you know, and I know, this is unacceptable. Officer Campbell, I want to turn to you quickly. Have you encountered situations where individuals with a history of violent crime were released and you saw later reoffended?
That would be the majority of the people I arrested.
The majority. Thank you, sir. In your view, how do lenient bail policies impact crime in Charlotte?
It would increase it because they know they're not going to be held accountable.
And how do you as a police officer feel when these criminals are arrested and are shortly released immediately back into the public?
I feel like majority of the work that I've done was pointless because they'll be out on the streets while I'm still writing the report.
Well, in my view, lenient bail policies are not working in the city of Charlotte or cities across this nation. Criminals need to know that when they get arrested, they will not be immediately released on just an unsecured bond or written promise to appear. In fact, I want to share a story that former Union County DA John Snyder shared with me years back. A man was arrested just over the Charlotte border in Union County and that I represent. Being a repeat offender in Charlotte, he suddenly noticed that the police car was headed in the opposite direction of Mecklenburg County Jail. After raising this concern with the police officer, he was informed he had been arrested in Union County, not Mecklenburg. And upon hearing this, the man began sobbing because he knew he was going to jail that night and would spend the night in jail. Jurisdictions across the state should strive to send a similar message wherever you are. Many of those issues need to be dealt with by our North Carolina General Assembly, as we've heard today, and I'm glad to see that they're already doing so with the passage of Iryna's law. And I'm certainly praying, and I hope all of you are urging Governor Stein to find the courage to sign it into law. And Mr. Woody, turning to you, could you please describe for all of us the changes that Iryna's law would make to North Carolina's system for bail?
In accompanying with the Pretrial Integrity Act, an offender who reoffends is automatically held 48 hours or until they see a judge in front of a first appearance. In addition to that, it would recuse the people from having an unsecured bail. They'd be required to post a cash bail, secured bail through a bail bondsman, or a family member with property or assets through an accommodation.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. And I believe Congress has got to take action as well. We cannot sit by and allow these mismanaged cities to put Americans in danger. In fact, I'm going to be introducing two bills in the next week, one for accountability, the other for transparency, as one of them is going to ensure jurisdictions that get federal grants for public safety do not defund their police or implement cashless bail lest they lose any of those government funds, and one to require the Department of Justice to publicly identify every jurisdiction in this country that implements these cashless bail policies. And I look forward to working with my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee to deal with these important matters. In just my last few seconds, let me say, Mr. Federico, how has Logan's tragic death shaped your view of the criminal justice system?
Very disappointing. When criminals have more rights and are respected more than an innocent young woman at age 22, it should send a shock wave to everyone.
Absolutely.